Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Artcasters number 292. And we have a returning guest, and we'll get to him in just a minute. We're going to go around the table. You may notice, just to get this out of the way up front, you may notice that we are down one of our hosts, one of our usual hosts. If you haven't heard, Corey was in a motorcycle accident. He's doing all right. It was a pretty brutal accident, but he is doing all right, and he's going to pull through it, but he's pretty banged and bruised. So, any well wishes or anything. Corey's probably, he was like, he's in the hospital right now. He's like, oh, I want to try to be on it. And he says, but he thought he was going to get to go home today. So he was going to try to be on anyway, but he'll probably, I'm sure he may be in the chats. He might already be. I'm not looking at the chats right now. So anyway, but he wanted to be here, but I'm like, hey, just take a rest, man. I mean,
Also, I mean, what's happened to him? Like, the last thing he needs to do is like laugh. And I'm imagining that would happen if you were on here with us, because we tend to goof around. And I'm like, I don't want to cause that guy to have pain. So hang in there, Corey. We miss you.
Yeah, he's got a few broken ribs and I think they said a semi-punctured lung. I don't know what that means exactly, but
broken collarbone. Yeah,
he said his hands are working fine and his cognition's fine. So he said he can still draw and do all that stuff. So he likes to joke about that kind of stuff, but for me, it's kind of scary. So.
Yeah. And I mean, Corey's a trooper too. So like, that's the great thing is like, Corey's going to like be walking and rehabbing as quick as he can. And so we all trust that he'll recover, but yeah, if you guys pray or like have positive thoughts or anything like that, send them Corey's way. And also for Malia too, right? Like, cause that's a lot of work with 3 kids. So yeah. Cool.
All right. So wishing Corey well. I'll go ahead and kick it off. You're on my channel, so I'm guessing you know who I am. Really, only thing I have to promote right now. Actually, I do have a signing. I don't know why I promote these local signings. I'm just hoping there may be some local people out here that may be interested out in Arizona. But I've got another signing on the 11th on Saturday. Where I'll be doing remarks and signing this Ice Cream Man cover I did for Image over exclusively at Surprise Comics. I'm just working on some remarks and stuff for that now.
Awesome.
You may notice I got a little different backdrop. I'm actually in California, but we're not really. I don't think I'll get out to see Josh this time around. It's always fun when we can. I think we've done it. At least once we've recorded it together at your place or whatever, but still with COVID, and I think Josh has house guests, and we get a bunch of stuff going on, but we're sort of in the same place, but not really. So, so that's, like I said, that's all I've got to talk about, really promote for myself, other than, there's always the digital products on my website. There's my YouTube channel, Making Comics 101. If you want to learn how to make comics, I have a step-by-step, course on how to make comics for free on YouTube. And like I said, if you want to get, any kind of digital products, they're available at circworks.com. What about you, Josh?
Oh, one quick question about the signing. Are you going to be also selling copies of your like Making Comics books there to sign?
I haven't ordered any new ones, but I still have some of them. Or I'll have to talk with the comic store because they actually want to start carrying them. So maybe they might want to hold off until they can, carry them themselves and whatever price they want to put on them and everything. So I'm not sure. I'll have to talk to them about that, but I will have some remarks for Young and the Dead too. I'm going to do some more of those because those I did some before, and I did 4 and I sold 3 of them.
Sweet.
And anything I don't sell, I may have to put that stuff on my website as well. But
I love it. So you guys get out to Surprise Comics if you're in
and Gene, we'll get to Gene in a minute. All right, Josh, go ahead.
You can get my graphic novel that is this. It's a confessional graphic memoir that grapples with questions of faith, mental illness, depravity, and ultimately redemption in a fallen world. It's 122 pages. Right now, it's still on sale for a ridiculously low rate. Awesome. Thank you.
That
Thanks
was one of my birthday presents to Gene. I figured he needed to get a copy of that. So
Awesome.
I love it. That's awesome.
It is fantastic.
And learn from Scott. Get it as birthday gift for people.
If you already have a copy, get a gift from somebody else, because right now, for whatever reason, Amazon has them real cheap, and Josh doesn't lose any money on the deal. He still gets his regular royalty.
I love it. Anyhow, thanks for showing that. But yeah, that's basically it. And then I would just say stay tuned, because there's some really good news coming. And then also on a nerdy little side note, a lot of people who follow this might know that I also do music, and we have a cut mixed EP finally for No Saboteurs. And so that should be like, just keep an eye out on joshuakimball.com for that and other very positive news. And then on top of that, also, I'm going to be hitting that goal by the end of the year of another solo album too, that Kevin Cross and I talked about many episodes back on Artcasters, because I'm not a bidding man who doesn't put down my money on it. So anyhow, all right.
Kevin back on the show.
Yeah, we really do. I think, man, he's got some pretty cool stuff too, like buying a business, kind of interesting, weird, fascinating stuff that I think would be good to have him on to talk about. Like maybe, I'll reach out to him. We'll see. Cool. All
right. So let me pull up. Gene's got about 3 different websites, but we'll pull up the Art of Gene first. So our guest is Gene. Now, I last time I mentioned him by his last name, but it seems like when you do art, you basically just go by Gene, all caps, right?
Yeah, you go through 50 years of people butchering your last name, and my last name's Jimenez, and people are going to go, is that H-I or H-E? And it's actually Jimenez, and it just became a lot simpler, to pass myself off as Madonna or Prince or a single first name and be a wannabe that way. So I just go with Gene in my art profession, and it's kind of caught on. It only took about 20 years, but it's easier that way.
Yeah, I was just hanging out with Gene for his birthday. That's one of the reasons we're in California, among others. But yeah, we got to hang out and talk comics. I'm like, oh, no, we need to take this. We need to kind of take these topics and put them on the Artcasters. We had like 3 different topics. So we're going to try to condense those into one, which may end up being like a 2-parter or something. We'll see what happens. But we've done that before. But Gene, before we get to the topic and everything, why don't you just kind of tell people what you do, where they can find your stuff? I mean, you do a lot of different stuff. So
I do. I've when you start in art, you kind of have an idea of, okay, I want to go and paint, or I want to go or even draw comics or whatever it is. But then you actually get lucky enough to land a job as an artist or a designer. And then I just found myself, being interested and curious, and I kept going in various different directions. And the more I did stuff for fun, the more people actually wanted me to do it for them. And so that led to fine art. It led to comic books. I started out as a comic book colorist. I was an original colorist for the 1995. It's weird saying 19 now because it's a whole nother decade ago or century ago. But yeah, the 1995 comics digital coloring symposium, when we brought digital coloring into the comic book world. I was one of the original presenters, along with Steve Olaf and Brian Haberlin and Kiko Takanashi. And so I've been with it for a long time. I was in comics, and then I kind of drifted away and started doing everything from television to fashion to I taught for 10 years at the university level, fine art design, graphic design. And now I'm back where I started, where I loved, and that's in comics. And I also do streetwear, as well as I have my own fine art gallery. We have Art Walk tomorrow night, downtown Orange County and downtown Santa Ana. It's going to be great. It's the #1 art walk in Southern California. So good food and good people just all over the place. So, and COVID safe. So it's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Wow.
Yeah.
Shouldn't I? I wish I was still down in your area. I would have definitely checked that out.
It's worth the trip. It's very worth the trip.
That's really not super far. I have a lot of because I went to Cal State Long Beach, so it's like a lot of friends like near and around that area. So we'll have to touch base after this and see if like there's like that 2 degrees of separation with people we know and
I'm sure there is. I always found that when I started talking art or creative circles, a lot of mine always expanded and overlapped. Yeah, especially if you've been around for a while, you eventually kind of start to know everybody, so it kind of helps and it supports. And one of my big mentors, and Steve Furco and a guy named Aaron Ricks, they're incredible guys. Both of them went to Long Beach, so I got to kind of meet a lot of the guys that came through there. So I
love it.
My first studio mates.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
All right, so I put another website up here, but yeah, you can find all of Gene's various websites in the description of this video if you want to click and check out his stuff. Like you said, very, very versatile. Everything from, well, he mentioned everything from the streetwear to gallery work to his own gallery, and fine art to comics, coloring, all that kind of stuff. So some of it, he's got a really cool thing in production that he kind of hit me to, which you can't really talk about much yet. But yeah, we imagine we'll have Gene back again once that gets underway, when he can talk about it, because that'll be a good topic. But so like I said, we were kind of hanging out for Gene's birthday, and we were talking a number of different topics. So we had kicked around the idea of talking about gentrification, because like I said, Gene owns an art gallery and kind of what's happening in that space. We talked about representation in comics, which we may have talked about a little bit before on this show with another guest. And we talked about transformational leadership, some of the programs that we've been through and how that relates to art. And I was like, well, Gene, what do you want to talk about? And he said, well, let's roll it all up into one ball. And
love it.
We're going to talk about professional experience and the wisdom of failing. And that's how you kind of framed it. So I don't know if you want to kind of kick it off and tell me exactly what you meant by that, Gene.
Well, I think I don't know any really, when we start coming up with these topics, and I was like, yeah, these are really good. This is kind of like some good deep work, and I think every artist, we've talked about this. I think every artist would be wise to go do some personal self-development, dig into themselves in a way that is constructive, in a way that is, supports what they're up to. It might not feel good as you're going through the process of this, because, some self-work and self-development work rarely, is like, a walking on sunshine. But it definitely supports in clarifying and figuring out where you're going with certain motifs, certain directions, certain ideas, and it actually helps flesh out some really good directions for people's art. And in that, you're also, if you're committed, you're working as a professional, and you'll find that as you start diving into oneself, time goes by. If you're really working the work of diving into yourself, you have this professional time that is going by as you're, developing your career, your mid-career, your early career, your late career, whatever it is. But you're gaining these nuggets of wisdom along the way. And I think, people that, if you're not paying attention, you'll have a lot of time go by and you'll miss some of these nuggets if you're not present for it. And in that, I've never met an artist that has been 1,000%, has batted 1,000. Everybody fails. Everybody fails a lot. In fact, there's one of the guys I love to talk about with this is Todd McFarlane. That guy carries around his rejection. I think he has like 103 or something like that, rejection letters that he just keeps right on his desk and lets him know, this is how many times I failed miserably enough that somebody actually took out a pen and wrote me and said, you failed. Yeah. And I think that's important, because it just drove him more. It said, okay, this is what he didn't take it as, you can't do this. It was taken as a, hey, this is what we're looking for. This is what you're doing, and they don't match up. So if you want to get where we are, not necessarily mean that that's going to be your end game, but if you want to get to where we are, this is what we're looking for. And you just put that in the stack of, all right, that's just another, arrow in my quiver, and I'm going to use it. I'm going to use it as drive. I'm going to use it as, wisdom of what not to do. And that way, when I go back out there and start swinging away again, I know what not to do, and I can actually go into different territory and hopefully, hit something. Eventually he does get, to where he is today by doing it his own way, and he does it with the wisdom of what isn't, what people aren't looking for. At least the professionals that were successful at that time.
Yeah, I think. Oh, I'm sorry, Gene.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, because I did a video on this a little while ago because I showed off some of my rejection letters. I don't have as many, not because I wasn't as proactive as McFarland, but I did keep some of those. And the way I like to look at it is really cool. The way to look at that is if you can gamify it, because if you think about, oh, well, Todd McFarland has 100 rejections, and if you're if you're trying to break into the field, well, you say, well, he's got 100, I can get 101 rejections. And if you do that, then you win no matter what, because if you get more, the more rejection letters you get, the higher you are. And if you get accepted, then that's even better. So you can't really lose.
Exactly.
Yeah. This also reminds me, there are so many great stories of this. The one I always like bringing up from the comics industry is there's this brilliant book that Art Spiegelman put out, that's called Meta Mouse. And for creators, I think it's like essential. It's kind of like it's a good window into like the actual kind of more like literary pitches, like rough iterations, like building a story, like surviving a story that's really successful, like a bunch of just like really cool deep dive stuff that only creatives would care about. But it's all collected and it's a great book. But what I love is there's a whole chapter of rejection letters for Mouse. And you think about when Mouse was coming out, he was co-editing Raw with Francois Mouly, who is such a brilliant editor that she now is like the senior editor of the New Yorker, But at the time, like her and Art Spiegelman, who was, I think, art directing for like Topps Cards at the time, and building this crazy graphic novel that's one of the best ever made. And yet he's getting rejection letters, and they're amazing to read because they'll be like, yeah, we only really publish literary works. We don't really want to publish like a cute cat and mouse cartoon. And it's like stuff like that, where it's really clear that the people hadn't read the work. Or they're like, oh, well, this just, it's just too dark. Like nobody's interested in dark books about like, history in the past. And I mean, keep in mind, this is like a Pulitzer winning thing. So I think that's all of that is so important to know, because like Gene's dead on in the sense of like, you're going to get rejections. Honestly, the only artists I know who've had an easy time of it have not really progressed very well and don't have like sustainable careers. Cause I actually think part of it is like building that, ability to kind of adapt, reframe, and like keep attacking. And that becomes so important because the industry shifts so much and things change so often that ability becomes like fundamental to success for an artist. So that's, I love the topic. I think it's a brilliant topic to bring up. It's definitely relevant for me. I've recently experienced something that's faced a lot of rejection for like literally almost a decade. That finally has kind of taken off, and it's shocking and kind of weird, but it's kind of backing up the idea of like persistence, with things like that's been true in my career, is like persisting with just taking those long shots and then taking the hits along the way. I think this weird kind of magic happens with it that almost sounds like The Secret or something, which is I really detest The Secret, but I like but I do think like when you approach things with intention, when you've been at this long enough, at least in my own experience, it's like I've had enough times had that reconfirmed. Like if you just kind of stay at it, keep fighting, stuff just happens. But the one way it won't is by like not creating that body of work or building up that 100 rejections. So I love that idea Scott has. I think, sorry, I'm going to, I want to hand it off too. But I do think that writers groups tend to be a little more aware of this process. And I think that cartoonists and animators and artists could really benefit from paying more attention to like writers who are building pitch packets and just dealing with rejections all the time. And I think there's a lot more discussion about that. That's part of the process. That's kind of how it works. But I do think, I don't know. I do think there is kind of like a weird magic to just pursuing the work, pursuing making good work, and then like gamify the rejections. Cause like Scott was saying about, Gene was saying that about the collecting, Todd McFarlane collecting that. That's like a lot of writers do that. I've had 3 or 4 friends of mine who do novel writing, who like frame their rejections, and they have like a rejection room in their house, you know? And I think it's brilliant because it's like, it kind of gamifies it. It makes you, have coping ways to kind of deal with the inevitable rejection. And sometimes like you learn great things from that. Like if somebody's saying, hey, you draw weird feet, maybe that means you got to draw better feet. You know? So anyhow, sorry, Gene, that's an exciting topic. It makes me happy to hear it, you know?
Well, yeah. And I think there's a lot to also kind of dig in with oneself in cutting oneself a break. So, and this is all really present for me because for the past year, I've been working on teaching myself to draw. So coming out of college, I'm like, okay, I want to draw comics. I want to do that. And then I didn't really work at it because I thought I had it, you know, so here I go off to, you know, San Diego. I'm going to go talk to a bunch of people and just get hammered. I just got rejected left and right. And it was, you know, I got a big old, you know, I got the whole pie of humble pie, you know, and then some. I got 9 pies and walking out of San Diego with 9 humble pies. So then I go back to the drawing board, and I distinctly remember now looking back, thinking to myself, I am just never going to make it, so why try? And that voice was given birth, and then that voice was strengthened. And over the years, that voice has driven that part of me to not draw. So I became a colorist. And I already knew, you know, I was going to be a colorist, but I wanted to have something, you know, on the side. I was just going to do my own work and everything for however many years, and then finally release it. Well, that, you know, subconscious deadline came and went, you know, in 5 years. And then I just kind of just let that thing simmer of, I can't draw. And so it was about 3 years ago, or 4 years ago, when I was developing, you know, my first book that I released in, you know, at the end of 2019, Downtown. There it is. Thank you. Thanks, Scott. And I had one of my favorite artists do it, and he's a good, dear friend of mine, Scott Sarag. He's really great. Love working with him. His art is so easy to color and work with, and it came out exactly the way I wanted it to. And I knew what I originally wanted to do was draw that myself. And when I found Scott, that he was available and was gung-ho on it, it kind of gave me an out. It took me off the hook. And looking back, would I have made the same choice if Scott was available again? Yes. Anyone else in the world, including, you know, the Jim Lees of the world? No way. But that Scott gave it a life in and of itself, and I wouldn't really have a hard time if he ever leaves that book, as we're starting to move forward with it now. But then comes up my next project, and I told myself I'm going to do it, and I've been killing myself for the past year. I've been the one giving my own rejection letters of trying to develop a style, trying to get this, and as an artist, that can wear on you. That can really, you know, you're just gonna. I've gone to bed night after night going, this isn't going to happen. I cannot get myself to what I want. And it takes a lot of self-forgiveness to, and realizing that you got to go, okay, give yourself a break here and just do what you know how to do, and, and invent what you don't know how to do. Because if you think you're going to walk back into something that you came out of, when you were in college, which for me was about 30 years ago, and be that guy and draw like you knew how to, then no, you have endless experience. You have this tremendous ego, and you have this tremendous body of work that, your body's changed, your mindset changed, the mechanics have changed, and how things go from here to your hand is very different. And you've got to allow yourself to surrender into that. And really, it wasn't until this past month, after about almost 13 months of struggling and beating myself up about it, that I've kind of finally grooved into something, and it's starting to come out. And so now I am where I am, but I just spent the past year of just beating the crap out of myself, thinking, okay, if I don't get this right, I'm just never going to be satisfied with my life. Whereas when I finally got to, if I don't get this right, it's fine, because I know myself well enough that I can find another Scott. I can find another, so-and-so to do this for me. Will that fill me up? Yeah, but I'm not going to give myself that out again. I'm not going to give myself, this is something I get to do for me. This is my deal. And once I finally kind of forgave myself, all of a sudden things are coming out. It's starting to develop. It's starting to, be okay.
Yeah.
So I think that type of development, self-awareness with, artists, and allowing themselves to be in that kind of conversation is important. Because I see a lot of artists, make a left turn about 6 to 9 months where I really wanted to make a left turn and not do it, and throw it away or put it back on the shelf for another 10 years.
Yeah.
So that's kind of one of the things that kind of was the impetus when we started talking about topics.
Yeah, kind of like what you're saying, Gene, about, first wanting to draw and stepping away from after getting rejections, and then your own, self-doubt, all of that, and then coming back to it. And for me, it's a journey. I mean, I know through my, artistic journey, my career, I mean, I've had to reinvent myself a number of times, or maybe not had to, but I got to, look at things and like, oh, this is what I really wanted to do at the time, but I don't feel that same way anymore. I've grown. I want to do something different. I mean, there was a time where I was like, I'm not going to I'm not going to even pick up my pencil unless somebody's paying me to do it, And then,
I remember those days.
I work for commissions. I'm a professional artist. I work for money. And then I got to a point where I got tired of doing client work, and I'm like, I want to do what I want to do and find a way to take that and earn money off of it. And, that was just a huge shift in the way I did things. And, and I've gone back and forth from working for myself and working for companies, a little bit of both at the same time, to what I'm doing now, trying to build passive income streams. So it's this constant, evolution and reinventing yourself along the way. So you just, keep that in mind, what you struggle with now, or what you're into now, that can all change as you're kind of moving through your artistic journey.
Yeah, dude. The thing that comes to mind that I really want to highlight that you mentioned was that negative voice that's like, oh, you can't do this. You're gonna fail. Like, you should do a different thing, right? Like, that's a voice all artists get. And I love that you mentioned that you kind of fed it, and then it kind of started embedding and becoming part of the process, because I still have that thought every once in a while. Going through, anytime I go through submissions, I have that thought, like literally every submission for a second. But what's neat is I've built up the habit of just like telling that thought to shut up, because it's a stupid thought. Like it's not a foolish thought, because the art world is difficult, right? And it is hard to make it. And in all reality, if I look at my work objectively, there's a lot of better artists, right? There's a lot of worse artists. But that it all hinges on like a compare and despair kind of mentality. And also it can kind of become, it can become like a self-fulfilling prophecy, because, and that's usually like one thing that I've learned when that comes up, that's benefited me a lot, is I usually ask, like, I stop and ask, like, if I listen to that, where does that lead? And then if I don't listen to that, where does that lead? And like generally, like for me as somebody who like struggles with, you know, depressive thoughts and stuff like that, like I wrote a whole book about, you know, struggling with mental illness and like and some pretty dark depression in my life. But that's one thing that helps with that kind of thing too, where, you know, the easiest way to sort like situational depression from like just kind of irrational depression is that, where you just ask, like, first off, like, is that true? Right. Which if your answer is no, then maybe you should just not be thinking about untrue things, right? Like, because like that statement can't be true, right? That's a prophecy. You're not a prophet. So like, you know, by saying like, hey, like, it, you know, if I do this, I'm a failure or whatever. By whose standard? How by what judgment? Like, what is the way to even measure failure? Like, the whole thing starts collapsing when you critically attack it. But it's hard to critically attack it because, you know, we can be our own stumbling blocks and our own worst enemies. I wish Corey was on here because I feel like his biography is very reflective of that. Like, he was a guy who got some discouragement from art teachers early on and had just sort of avoided drawing and learned how to draw at a much older age than most artists. And you know, within like 6 years, is it 6, Scott, or 5? I don't know. It's
but it was a relatively short time, and it always blows me away that when he said, I mean, he says he's always been a creative person, but he hasn't, you know, like Gene, but he just hasn't really applied himself as far as the drawing aspect. So, and I think that's going to be the same with you, Gene, because he said just because he is a creative person, when he applied himself to drawing, it wasn't as difficult as somebody who just, you know, is. Because and it takes different time. It takes different amount of time for different people. Yeah. Some people are just like, they just have a natural, what's the word I'm searching? Ineptitude. That's not right. That's not the right term, right? I don't know. What's the
aptitude?
Aptitude. Yes.
There we go.
So an aptitude just to pick up drawing but some people it's more, there's more of a struggle involved. You know, I see kids way younger than me that just can blow me out of the water. And
easy.
So you never know, but it always amazes me at what Corey can do now. And he hasn't really been doing it for that long.
Yeah, and Gene, I suspect the same that'll be the same with you, because you've been working with aesthetics for a long time, like with color theory, with design. Like, you know, drawing is just design. So it's like, you know, for me, I had the opposite issue where I used to avoid doing type for a really long period of time because I was just frightened of typography. And then I remember when it unlocked for me was very similar to what you're talking about, where I stopped making excuses for myself because I looked at all the artists I admire and they all do their own type. Like, the guys I like know how to do typography really well. And then second, I started dissecting type and realizing it's the same thing as like anatomy. It's like it's illustration. Like, typography is illustration. Custom type is illustration. And once I realized that, like, it's something unlocked. But I wouldn't have gotten to that point if I hadn't just overcome the hurdle and the self-talk of like, well, I'm an illustrator, I don't do type. You know, like, because the second you allow yourself those definitive statements about your own destiny, it's like you really limit your capacity for growth. But I agree with you about self-forgiveness too during that process, because, you know, like, if the whole time I was learning how to letter, like right now I can letter pretty well. But when I was first learning how to do typography, even after having type classes, like learning kerning and stuff didn't make any sense. It took me years to start actually understanding it. But what's neat is Now I do pretty competent type that I would have looked at back then and been like, that's pretty amazing. I'll never get there. But I'm still like, if I compare myself to like a Chris Ware or something, I'm not going to ever do type, like, because it's like, I mean, you know what I mean? Like you can't put your expectations on that. Like Chris Ware's father was a sign painter. And so the guy grew up around hand lettering and graphic design, like the old hat way, and was trained in how to do signage. So it's like, you can't kind of make your experience the same as somebody else's. I just think that everything you're mentioning is so important. I mean, I'm sure it's going to resonate with all of our experiences, because it's like that is the process of art. It's exciting.
I think it's kind of funny just hearing Josh talk and how much of what he's saying kind of resonates with kind of what we learned through like the leadership training. Like he's pretty much touching on, fact versus interpretation and all that stuff. So it's kind of interesting to hear him talk about that. But I don't know if you want to, what you have to add to that, Gene, because there's a lot there to digest.
Well, there's it goes back to one of the very first lessons I learned on what it means to work. To really put in work. And I was about 12 years old, and my grandfather, who was a self-made man and one of the first successful Hispanic businessmen in Orange County, and he had a huge impact on my life. But I remember I was 12 years old, and he was very kind of grumbly and everything, and he had this olive tree farm over here and right next to South Coast Plaza, and he took me out to the back and he said, "Okay, I'm going to teach you how to dig a hole." And I kind of looked at him and I said, "Dig a hole? That's not what I do. I mean, that's not what you do. You have workers that dig holes, He says, "No, you're going to learn how to work today." And so he gives me a shovel and he says, "Get a 3 foot by 3 foot by 3 foot hole." And I'm thinking, well, that's only 3 feet. That's fine. I can do that. So 9 hours later, I'm in tears. I'm blistered up. I've discovered as a 12-year-old that I can sweat and sweat profusely, and I'm exhausted, and it's dark, and he has flashlights hanging from other trees that are around me. And it wasn't until about, like I said, about 8:30 at night that I realized I'm digging this hole. But he sells these olive trees. So I'm looking around and I realize all the olive trees and everything that's around me are actually above ground. And there's no holes in this yard. The only hole that was there is the hole that I was digging. And I just kind of stopped digging. He comes out, and I remember I'm 12, and this is my Mexican grandfather. He comes out and he hands me a Budweiser, and we sit at the edge of this hole, that I'd finished. And I'm sitting there having a beer with my grandfather at age 12. And he goes, "And today you learned how to work." And that was my first experience with the concept of nothing to lose and nothing to gain.
Yeah.
And that moved me. That moved me, and I still think of it to this day. In fact, like I said, about a month and a half ago, I really kind of dug in on myself and said, what do I have to gain? Or what am I so afraid of losing by not pushing, not stepping into some unknownness and just seeing what the hell comes out, and not trying to make it so, not trying to hold on so tight, and not trying to be so about it that whatever is in my made up mind that I think I'm going to do, or revolutionize the world with whatever I'm trying to create, and just let things fly, that I can actually move on something. I can actually, and like I said, in the past month and a half has been fantastic, because all of a sudden I've really, and it takes conscious and it takes practice, because some days I actually do. I'll fall back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back of, you're moving, you go, oh, awesome. Okay, finally, this next one, we're just going to knock it out of the park. And you don't, and you actually, you're kind of step on yourself again. And it takes time, the professionals and, people that make the magic every day. It's an ism, but it didn't start out as an ism.
Yeah.
It started out as just a practice, and now it's their breath. And I think I'm starting to feel that breath. But it takes a lot of, allowing yourself to be in. Look, you could stop right now. It's not going to make a damn bit of difference. So you have nothing to lose, and you can stop right now and you'll be in the exact same place as you are, and you have nothing to gain. But if you're willing to take that one step forward into the unknown and just see what happens, then I think creativity kind of allows it. That it's that unconsciousness that we have, that everyone has, and this is what I love about, music writers and especially visual artists, that just kind of let it go from there, not from making a statement or not from making a moving some other piece on the board, but allowing that expression just to come out. And it's like that raw something that just happens. And I think when we start getting the practice of that, then we start, playing with our genius.
Yeah, I'm smiling because I have a similar story. My dad had a swimming pool company, and he would drop me off, and you got to dig these ditches for this PVC pipe or this spa, and he would just drop me off and then take off and do something else, and expect me when I came back to this whole dog. Unfortunately, I didn't get a beer at the end, and then I didn't learn the same lesson you did, Gene. I think the lesson that I learned was that I don't want to work for my dad. I want to be a comic book artist.
I got that lesson that night too.
Yeah. I'm so inspired by this because, like anyone who's gone to art school, like I still consistently run into friends who I put out a book this year, and a lot of them want to do a book, like a graphic novel. Like that's when we were in art school, and this is like getting close to definitely over a decade now. But it's like, when we were in art school, I remember they were really passionate about comics. They wanted to be comic artists. They wanted to do graphic novels. And the kind of graphic novels a lot of these guys wanted to do are the same kind I like, which are like these weird auto-bio ones where it's a long shot anyway, even when you've done it. But it's like I run into a lot of those people who listen to those voices that you were describing, and decades later are like talking to me about, at some point I'll have the time and I'm going to do the thing, and it's really cool that you were able to and stuff like that. I'm like, no, like that's the I love that what you're talking about, because it cuts that out too, because part of that can be my drive too. That's like the future forward thinking I do, where I'm like, I don't want to do that. Like, I don't want to be one of the guys at I'm part of the National Cartoonist Society, and I meet NCS members who are like Disney directors and talking about how one day they're going to make a graphic novel. And it's like, you know what I mean? Like, they're like, one day I'm just going to tell corporate, whatever, I'm just going to do my own thing. And it's like, you can do that now. And that's, I try to keep that in mind, because every time you choose to invest in the muse, and this gets into that art for art's sake stuff, but I'm all about that nowadays, which is funny because I used to be like Scott was describing too, where it's like, I used to be the guy. I mean, even on Big Illustration Party Time, the podcast we used to do, I used to be like, you shouldn't draw anything unless you're getting paid. Like, this is a profession, it's a career, Yeah. But I've since changed my mind too, because I've had that reality of when you're making money doing art that doesn't fulfill you, it's just not very fulfilling. So anyhow, point being, just don't be that guy. You don't have to be that person. You can start working on that dream project this minute, and if you can't give it a day, give it an hour. If you can't give it an hour, give it 30 minutes. And everyone I know who's achieved anything remotely close to what I want to achieve in art has done that. They most of them had a crappy job, and then they worked really hard, and they made time during that crappy job, or I mean, heck, I know a ton of people now who are full-time parents, and then they have to make that window, the 1 or 2 hours, which is when you have a young kid, when does that 1 or 2 hours even exist? All of this stuff, but it's an active decision where you're I'm going to commit myself to the muse and to art. Or you can just go, well, yeah, but then I could fail, and then it's wasted time, and drop it. And then decades later, be like the person who's how do you get a graphic novel? And it's you just do it. That it's a hard lesson, but it's I get so excited whenever I meet anyone who opens to that and realizes like their potential, because it's like, and this all sounds woo woo, right? But it's like, that is about your potential. It's like, if you're limiting your potential, if you're not pursuing kind of the thing you're going to pursue. And I will also just reiterate too, like at the end of that destination, this isn't like a Sisyphean task where you actually aren't Sisyphus at the end. Like at the end, the boulder just goes down back the hill. It is digging, like Gene was describing, it is digging that 3 foot by 3 foot box, because you're going to have like brief moments of contentment, but the pursuit of it is kind of the whole point. Like, and I think that's the game that people who have wild success sometimes even miss. Like you'll see interviews with extremely famous musicians and artists, and they missed those periods of time when they were playing like crappy bars and trying to get people into their music, because that's the game, and that's the fun. Like that's where it's, I don't know, I'm rambling, but yeah, it's I'm just super inspired by what you're talking about. And I also, you're in the game now, which is, I think that's the cool part, is like that's all it takes to be in the game, is to actually just be doing the fight. Like, and if you're in the ring, and even if you're taking punches, at least you're in the ring. Like I will respect anyone who steps in the ring, as opposed to like the sideline people, So I don't know if that makes sense.
I mean, and this is where Scott can attest. There's a theory, and my wife, who is a master trainer in transformational work and self-development. But there's a story she talks about. When you go to a football game, there's a bunch of different parts to a football game. There's the broadcast who is telling you what's going on. There's people on the sideline cheering, and then there's coaches on the sideline telling you what to do, and then there's the players, and so who do you want to be? Do you want to be the guy that the guy up in the booth is just telling you what's happened in the past. That's all they can ever tell you. The people in the fans, they're just saying you did it right or you did it wrong. Mm-hmm. And they're very one-dimensional, and we call them social media. That's who they are. You either did it right or you did it wrong. And then you have your coach, who is basically saying, okay, try this, or what would happen if you did this, or what would, and their job is to see what you can't see. Mm-hmm. Their job is to kind of point out, it's like, hey, okay, that last thing that just happened, you just got blindsided, and you just almost took your head off. Okay, I saw it coming, and this is what we're going to do next to avoid that. So why don't you try this? And you go and try that, and you might get your head taken off again, but at least you're not trying what you just did.
Yeah.
So, and then you're the player, and you're the player that's going to get up and run and get your head taken off and get back up and try again until you score. Mm-hmm. And so who do you want to be? Who is, what is this? Do you want to be, the guy on the sideline talking to the cheerleader saying, oh yeah, I do that too? Because that's who I was when I graduated college. I was that guy for 13 years. I graduated a degree in fine art and graphic design. And for 13 years, I told people I was painting. And they were like, oh, awesome. It sounds cool. I'm like, oh, yeah, it's great. I didn't have one painting, and then I had a son. And the moment they put him in this is a true story. The moment they put him in my arms in the living room, I looked at him. I'm like, oh, I am screwed. I am so screwed, because I can lie to everybody else, but I couldn't lie to him.
Yeah.
Because we have kids, and, the point is, try not to give them the horse that you rode in on. Try and, we're their horses that they rode in on, but they don't have to be that horse. They don't have to ride that horse for the rest of their life. So if I can't teach my son and my daughter to go after their dreams, whether it's going to knock them down or they're going to get their face smashed in the dirt or whatever it is, but if I can't be that example, then I'm not giving them much in the world. That's because that's all I have to give them.
Yeah.
I can give them all tons of money and all that stuff that comes and goes. But if I can't give them just straight up honesty and being real with themselves and allowing themselves to, create from what their purpose is in the world and why they're here, then as me, making up that I'm going to call myself an artist or act or be the job of artist. And our Western society actually doesn't have a job called artist. But if I'm going to say go after your dreams, then I have to go after my dreams, whether they're scary or not, whether they're whether they're going to kick me in the face and trying to go after them, or whether I think just inside my head that I'll never achieve it. Regardless, I get to show them that I'm going to be and do who I say I'm going to be and do.
Yeah, I love the coach and game analogy too, because I think, you don't, like, for instance, some of the stuff I was sharing does come from like leadership courses. I probably not the same kind, but from developing as a manager, like, because I have to art direct, and every once in a while I'll be lucky enough to have like training that's comped, by where I work, and it's always really beneficial, because it's like you have to kind of analyze yourself, analyze your own self-talk, right? Because your self-talk becomes the talk that you give teams. And it becomes the what you project to other people. And so a lot of this is like self-work that comes from like, experience, and from and definitely, like, you always are going to benefit from a coach. And honestly, you need support in your life, like outside of people who have an incentive to be dishonest. And sometimes that incentive is the best incentive, right? Like, some friends will tell you when you have like something on your face and you're about to go out for a job interview, and some friends won't, right? And both like can kind of come from a good place. Like the one who doesn't say anything's like, well, I don't want them to feel bad, like, but the person who's gonna go like, hey, like, you should wash your face, don't go out like that, is willing to take that short-term hit for your long-term good. And like, I think that those are the people you want to look out for, and like, and definitely have in the sort of mentor position in your life. Whether it's like, I rely on, I can probably count on my hands, like on one hand, the people that I really rely on and lean on for mentorship and stuff. But it's super important if you're going to be in the game. You do need encouragement, and you need people who also. Sometimes you need the coach who's going to be the jerk who's like, dude, you can do 10 more push-ups. And you're like, I can't. And they're like, no, I've seen you do it before. You can do it. You're not leaving until you do that. Yeah. You need that. I mean, that's so fundamental. So that's really a good analogy and exciting. I want to, I don't know. These leadership courses sound really cool.
You dig them. You can only get something out of them when you're practicing and whatnot. Yeah. I think Scott kind of probably in the middle of that, and I'll be 20 years into it in this October.
Nice.
And it's been the journey is continuous. It's not like hey, I did that thing 20 years ago and I'm still awesome. And no, the problem is you kind of pull back scrape away all the bullshit, and you're left with yourself. And then that's what you get to be with the rest of your life, or and if you keep working it, that you're constantly scraping off the stuff that isn't necessary.
I love that.
Your mind and all that stuff. But I think one of the things I mentioned earlier, one of my first studio mates was Steve Furco, and I always loved telling stories about him, because you really do become grateful for the people that are around you, especially creative people, mm-hmm. And Steve, kind of revolutionized coloring in my eyes, as he got into it after I taught him how to turn on a computer. And, but one of the things I would love is, I'm sitting there coloring and I'm nowhere near the beautiful work that Steve's doing, but I would do something and there was always two reactions, and I learned what they meant. Steve, I could say, hey, Steve, what do you think of this? And he would say, yeah. And that meant I missed way bad. And anything besides yeah, I knew I was in the right direction, because it would usually be something like, oh, okay. But every time I learned that every time yeah came out of his mouth, it was him trying to think. And Steve was such a great, nice, humble guy.
Just trying to think, how do I frame this?
Yeah, how do I frame this so as it doesn't crush you? But those type of people, those are gold nuggets in the world. And a lot of people dismiss them, especially creative type people who, and this is why it helps so much to, surround yourself with people that are not only like-minded, but like-driven and like what you like. You're probably going to marry somebody that isn't, or spend your life with that doesn't have that insight to what you do, which is one of the reasons why they like you, because you bring a different aspect to it. The other side of that is they may not be the best sounding board sometimes, because I know, and this is why I love my wife, and Scott knows my wife, but she just tells me whatever the hell she thinks. And that works so great.
That's
and sometimes
awesome.
It doesn't, because I just really wanted to hear something positive or something, it's like, but that feedback is always good feedback, and once you start learning to listen, how, what it means or what the expression is, you can grow, and you can build up so much from people that are willing just to share themselves with you.
Yeah, dude. One real huge positive, because my wife's a kids book illustrator, and so it's like one huge positive is we can like bat aesthetic trouble off each other. Like we can be like, I don't know what to do with this type. Like it's not reading here, and then like, oh well, have you tried this? That's the big upside. The downside is you're usually not going to get the like, oh, you're such a brilliant artist kind of thing, because like we all know, like we both know how to draw, and honestly she's better at drawing than I am, so she's not like mystified by my abilities as an artist. Not that she doesn't downplay them, it's just she knows the craft. So it's like it's kind of a different game when you're dealing with a peer, and rather than like, if it were like someone who's outside of your interest, I could imagine that being very frustrating, because you could be like hitting this wall creatively and they're like, what are you talking about? And you're like, the hand's not working. Whereas like with another artist, they can be like, oh, here, like, have you tried drawing it from like this angle? And you're like, oh, okay, there we go. So there's benefits, but like, again, the ego feeding, from like a non-creative, and I don't mean that in a negative way, just like a non-creative, or maybe a person, I think most people are creative, but a creative in a different field, is you could get that ego boost more maybe. Yeah. Although I think you'd get a lot of confusion as to like, why do you want to dedicate like 4 hours a night or 3 hours a night to this thing? Like, I don't know. It's a give and take, but it's always interesting to me to hear the different things, because I have friends who've gone both directions, where it's like some who are a pair of creatives, some who aren't. It's interesting.
Yeah. I was cracking up when you said that. My girlfriend's sitting right across from me, and we were just talking about this even before the show, because there's things that I was working on, and she's very honest with her feedback, and sometimes I get defensive. So it's all like, well, are you going to take the feedback? Are you going to be defensive about it? So,
that's so true, though. I get that all the time. Like there's times where my wife will be like, that neck, man, that, I'll have spent like a long time drawing somebody or something, and she's like, that neck's just out of proportion. It's weird. It's just not working. And I'll be like, oh, it's fine. It's and then like 5 minutes later, I'm like, she's right. Because she's right. She knows what she's saying. Yeah.
Well, and that was actually, this is another grandfather lesson that I got. He was in the masonry business, and they did a lot of bricklaying. So, a lot of what you see down in Balboa and Fashion Island and all that stuff, they did a lot of that stuff. All the palm trees you see down in Fashion Island, that was my grandfather.
Awesome.
But, I go down to these places with him, or we go to an old project. I'm like, God, that's so beautiful. And he goes, oh yeah, that was so-and-so. And he was one of the best bricklayers and everything. And he turned to me one day, he said, always hire somebody that's more talented than you.
Yeah.
You're going to be in a position. He goes, look, you're educated, and they're going to put you in a leadership role. Always find somebody that's way more talented than you at what you need them to do, because otherwise you can do it yourself. Mm-hmm. And I kind of stuck to that. And I've had the privilege of working with some of the most amazing artists and most amazing creative people, and surrounding myself with, really amazing people that I've just kind of opened up to and said, hey, look, I'm hiring you because I can't do what you do.
Mhm.
you know, and I value that more than anything in the world. And so, you know, I mean, just Scott Serag, you know, and working on my first book here, I think he's one of the most amazing, talented, you know, chameleon artists there is. And, you know, I wish, I know a lot of guys like, you know, like him in the world that, you know, I wish other people in position that can support artists and whatnot will give them the break, you know, and allow that, you know, okay, this person needs something or whatnot. There's a space to be fulfilled. Let's fill it with somebody that, you know, has the juice and you know, is going to.
Oh,
We lost your sound.
we lost your audio real quick.
Say something, Gene. Yeah, we lost your audio. Did the battery go dead or? Oh, it's on mute. It looks like you may have hit mute. I see mute on there. Unless
Let me see if I can. Can I
control
unmute?
that?
I was trying.
Yeah.
Oh,
okay.
there we
Say
go.
something.
Try that.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there was some kind of mute button that got hit.
Weird.
We can hear you now.
Okay, good.
That was resistance. That's the whole. Sorry, I'm a big fan of the War of Art, and there's like this idea of anytime you try to do something positive in your life, you're going to experience mass amounts of resistance, which I think holds true. And it's interesting because we're making getting some really good wisdom here, and then it mutes. That's resistance. Overcome it, guys.
I don't need to hear what you're saying. You're crazy. We had.
You were talking about your the artist that you had hired and how inspiring he was and how you were kind of wishing you could see more people kind of nurturing artists like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it probably would lead into that gentrification conversation that we had kind of it was a topic that we put up front.
Yeah, I know, because I know Josh lived in Portland for a while, so he's pretty familiar with that.
That's true. That's one of the reasons I moved back to California. Honestly, I was uncomfortable having grown up in Southern California, suddenly being surrounded by like 98% white people was a little weird. I was like, where's the diversity in this city? Like, I'm sure it may be changed or improved, but I love that about LA County, that, you know, like there's everyone. And that's one of the reasons Los Angeles is like one of the most powerful cities in the world. Like it's diversity means power and means, creativity and innovation and awesomeness.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when the word gentrification starts coming around, you know, as a creative person or as a, you know, somebody that wants to kind of start moving something, that kind of is the marker that lets you know you've done something.
Yeah, that's true.
It's when when other people want in on what you're up to. You know? And so right now, you know, in downtown Santa Ana, there's several projects, and the construction fences are going to go up in the next couple of weeks, and everyone's going to freak out. And I know this because I'm on the board for downtown Santa Ana, and one of the guys that runs the projects for the new 220 apartment thing that's going up, he's like, oh yeah, the fence is going to go up and the cranes are going to come in, and I'm going, the artists are just going to freak out, because nowhere in any of your presentations did you say gallery or artists or space for artists or whatnot, but it's going to be this brand new complex, and there's probably going to be a Chico's and an Apple store in there somewhere. But when it comes to gentrification, you know, I don't think anybody wins, and I think everybody could win.
Yep.
And it works a couple ways, you know. Nobody wins in that when you displace the people that create the creative culture that you want to buy into, you don't have that anymore. So now you're left with selling apartments or selling an area. It's like, oh yeah, this has all this. It's like, no, it doesn't, because all those people you just kicked out, or you just out price, you know. So nobody wins that way. But it could win if you're smart about it. So there's a great documentary, and I was just on a review board for it. It's called Alice Street, and it's about Oakland. And, you know, and the murals and everything that went up in Oakland, and all of a sudden they got, it's at the corner of Alice, I think it's Alice and 14th Street in downtown Oakland, Or on one side of the street, you have, a 9-story building that is the largest African dance center in North America, probably on this side of the world, and collection of African dance. And then on the other side is an old hotel made up of, I don't know, a couple hundred Asian arts. And they never knew each other existed until, the murals were going to be covered up by this big gentrification sky tower that they wanted to put, because this is such a eclectic neighborhood.
Yeah.
And they're shutting this one down. They're going to shut this one down. And so great documentary on kind of the lack of communication that goes on with when projects like this happen. As a creator, though, you got to know that if you've been somewhere or you are somewhere, and you start hearing this, they're going to come in, and it's like, keep going, keep doing what you're doing, because it's going to do one of two things. It's going to propel you to what's next, and what next might be taking that whole cultural game that you've established up to a whole nother level, and you're just going to expand it with bigger buildings around you. Great, awesome, fun. Or it might propel you to take what you've learned and what you've established and take it to a different place.
I love it.
Neither is bad. Neither is, you don't have to, have nostalgia and being on the same street corner every day or the same block and everything. But your creativity is you. So when you take that places, it's not somebody else won. It's, you actually just grew out of where you were.
Yeah.
I always look at the Image guys with this, or even like, the guys that start at Marvel and then they kind of, go out and do their own things. And I always admire them when they just keep rolling. You keep rolling. And then I go back and look at, like the entire Kubert family, who just not only find their groove, but then are so good at it that they just infect everybody else that comes through and get their creativity on. And like, man, you can open up any one of those guys' books or portfolios at any given day and be inspired to go grab a pencil and a pen, and a piece of paper, and be like, God, this is magic. This is, and those are people that just get and understand why they are where they are, and are within themselves.
I love that.
Be okay with when you start being within yourself, creativity can happen. The creativity is endless. Yeah,
and I think that what you're describing too is like it's definitely bigger than just neighborhoods, because this is like the pattern of corporate America. Like in general, like like you look at like the history of like hip hop, especially in like New York City or whatever, and it's like it's this thriving, growing, organic thing that's just being created, and it's being created by groups of people who just have no in or outlets. They're just like, well, screw them, we're going to make our own thing. And this is, the origins of punk rock are really similar too, where these wonderful scenes like thrived and grew and created their own cultures and rules and became cool. And then once they're cool, you have all the like coke snorting like bigwigs like come in and they're like, we want in on this cool stuff, but like they don't understand it. And the second they get invested in it, it can kind of destroy it. So just like Gene was saying, like you can roll with it and then just take their money and do cooler stuff with like, on a grander scale and have better distribution, which is great. Or two, you can be the legit hip hop somewhere else. And like, you see this in New York, especially with the hip hop movement, where it like kind of moves throughout the boroughs, like, because the second one kind of gets all like, I don't know, Manhattan gets all lame. Then it's all about Brooklyn, and then like Brooklyn gets lame. So then it just becomes about the different sections. So yeah, I just think that's visible in music and art everywhere. And my favorite guys are like the ones that just did their own thing. The guys who were doing Zap Comics, I'm not recommending this for everybody, but the guys, when they were originally distroing Zap Comics, like they talked to drug dealers to distro their comics. They were like, we have no distribution. Hey, you sell weed. Could you sell comics too? And if you read those comics from that time, it kind of made sense. Like the two kind of did go hand in hand, but that's how they got like a lot of those Zap comics, like Distrode. I'm not saying you should do that. I'm just saying there's like, you can subvert and trust your own instincts and don't, deal with drug dealers or anything. But the point being, trust your own instincts and find a route in. And if the routes are closed, sometimes you'll find a better route and it's much cooler. And then you become the cool kid. Like it, yeah. I mean, 9 times out of 10 right now, like Chris Ware does covers of the New Yorker and stuff. He's like art culture. And, when he was starting, he was just this weird guy, like doing stuff in art school, like, submitting stuff to Raw and like, getting rejected by a bunch of publishers. So it's, yeah, be the cool kid. Cause then like the funny thing is all the mainstream guys like were blown away by Chris Ware. And then suddenly you saw all of cover design for comics get influenced by this one weird indie cartoonist. So it's like, that's the thing. They want to be the cool guy. Like and you can write it and succeed or like adapt, move elsewhere and make another scene. Like it's, yeah, I love it. That's a good point. Sorry, that's inspiring. You brought up so many good, just points that kind of light a fire. So it gets me all excited.
So I'm kind of curious, Gene. What do you with what's happening now in your area, the district, where your gallery is? What are your plans? How are you going to, approach that as far as, what steps are you going to take with your gallery? Or yeah, I'm just curious.
One of the things. So when I first got out of college, I went to work at this really small design studio. And it was awesome because I got to work on a big computer, and at the time, the big Quadra was like the big Quadra 800 was like the biggest computer you can find, and I was pushing Photoshop, and I was writing Adobe hand letters, or posting them on this thing called the Well, and there was this, and I actually had some credits on the initial, Photoshop from like 4 to 8 when the credits popped up.
So awesome.
Yeah, and it was cool. And that's actually how I, got into digital comics. But what happened was we wanted to get another computer for the office. So I went to an auction. And I don't know how they got confiscated Quadra 800s at this auction, but they were there. And so my brother just happened to have his day off. So he went with me, and we actually bought a Quadra 800 for ourselves. And then I left that company and started my own design studio with my brother literally off the end of my bed, because I didn't have couldn't afford an office chair. And
just to give people a perspective on that time, like that's not a cheap purchase. That's a huge investment. So a big gamble.
Yeah, I had nothing. I was starving, struggling designer and everything. But we started what we had at the time was called Guerrilla Graphics at the end of my bed, and then we eventually got a studio, and we started getting clients. In fact, our first client, we went to Kinko's and we made business cards. And I turned around, the guy next to me goes, "Hey, that's a great card. Can I have one of those?" And that guy became our first client. It was cool. But we started coloring. We became like this, little studio that could produce decent coloring for independents. And eventually we did some stuff with Image and Top Cow and stuff like that. And that was awesome. And we had Steve Furco, and kind of every now and then he'd drop in and go, yeah. And then we knew we had kind of adjust things, but I met some great people and got to work and on some really cool projects. In fact, one of them right now, I've kind of started my own label and starting my own book, but one of them right now is just about to, and I wish I could say it. What's Kinko's exactly? But I can't say it right now because we're about a week and a half from doing a huge press release, but we're about to relaunch it. And we didn't have Kickstarters. We didn't have, we barely had a Kinko's, and that was like when Kinko's came out, that revolutionized the place. And at the time, I swear to God, I turned to my brother, we're in Kinko's. I go, what would be really cool? They just put a coffee shop in this place. You just put a coffee shop and have places where you just sit here and work and if you had like a portable laptop or
Mm-hmm.
something like that, because laptops back then were like, they were just meant for checking email. If you can find a modem you can plug in, and those weren't anywhere either. So so then Starbucks came around, but that's a whole nother deal. So anyway, but we're about to relaunch this new partnership with an old friend. I'm so excited about it, and you get these little nuggets of dream projects you get to work on, and I kind of I kept falling backwards into projects as I came out of school. So I got to work with a really cool independent label, and then I kind of became the publisher for that, the head publisher for that, and then we went, my brother and I, and we took the whole studio with us, actually, all the 6 guys that we were working with, and we started doing fashion, and we did Jenko jeans, and that was cool.
Mm-hmm.
And that's starting to come back now, oddly enough, because my brother actually went back to work with them. And but then from there, I worked in New York and worked in the hip hop scene, and was Puff Daddy's webmaster for a while, and that was cool. But every time I'm doing stuff like I mentioned, it's really about, oh, this is cool. I just want to do this. This is fun. I want to learn web design, or I want to learn fashion. I want to learn comic books. Because it was fun, and I kept just following just keep doing it enough, and people will pay me for it. And somewhere along the way, it worked, and that was really cool. But there was always these, those couple little things in the back, and one of them especially, it's like, if I had a second chance at that, if I was going to go back 25 years ago and do that again, that would be the dream project. Because knowing what I know now, and having the experience I know now, and having failed miserably the first time, and allowing, things to go the way they did. And, we all have those little skeletons and those regrets and those things, at our age, at least my age, that you wish you would go back and go, that's one thing I'd love to take another hard shot at. And so that's going to come about in the next couple of weeks here. And
yes,
we've already signed it. The press release isn't out yet, but we are good to go, and I'm so excited. So I would love to come back and share that with you guys when it comes about, because it's going to be huge. It's going to be so cool, and the way it's going to come about is going to be really, really awesome.
Oh, that's so exciting.
I mean, you and Josh both have things that are going to be releasing pretty soon, so maybe that could actually be like a big topic, the unveiling. I got to come up with something exciting that I'm working on. I don't know.
We had this bit, Scott, on our indie review show with Corey, where because we've lately, like the last few times we've streamed, I've just had to be like, this is something I can't talk about. We started joking that we should make it like a conspiracy theory, that we're all like holding some evil, dark secret behind us, and it has to do with Frank Salazar in the chats. So we created a conspiracy theory about Frank Salazar. And the question is the Frank Salazar commenting in the chats really Frank Salazar?
That makes a lot of sense, because he's an awful lot of places at once.
Yeah.
And I know when you have superheroes like that, and you got 2 people in one, or 2 people are either they're never in the same room, then you start to question it. And you also have it, if they're in too many places at once, how can that be? So that is
so to feed that more, I'll just say, is what Gene and I aren't able to talk about for our own careers, does this relate to this conspiracy? Who knows? Find out next time, guys. Sorry to pull you in on the conspiracy, Gene. But that is really exciting, and it's funny to be in that. It's exciting and fun to be in that position. It's also frustrating to be in that position where you're like, I have good news that I can't share it. But it's also like, that's the best position to be in. Like, so that's really exciting.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's kind of been a long time coming, and how we've danced with this the past 25 years has been, I've seen it from afar, I've seen it up close, I've been on the inside and the outside, and when you see something and you can make a difference, but you're just not allowed to touch it, it's hard. And then all of a sudden, stars align and you get that call, and it's like, hey, what are you up to? we have this and we have this opportunity, and I think we have a general shot. You want in? And I'm like, those are like once in a lifetime deals and whatnot. So you got to take them when they get, because they don't come around that often. You don't get a second shot at really cool things,
Yeah. Oh, and just to tie this back into that digging a hole analogy too, that is when you really start digging the hole, because like the second you're given, like when the stars align in this industry and you're given an opportunity to shine, like that's the time to put in your guns and make something awesome and make the best thing you can, because that thing may not come back. And 9 times out of 10, the stuff you look back on like from a decade ago that you feel the most proud of aren't the big clients. It's always the whatever project that you just poured your heart in. And so if you do that with every opportunity, then you're going to look back at like a lifetime of art you can be proud of, I'm excited about that. But yeah. So yeah, when you guys do get that, when that door opens, kick it, like
totally. Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of the whole idea of luck, and how, yes, some people get lucky, but when you have that chance, you still have to take it. You still have to know and be in a position to know what to do when you have that chance and recognize that opportunity. And also, the more you're out there, sure, there is some luck involved in, having a career art or breaking into this or that or whatever. But the more you put yourself out there, the more you increase your chances of getting lucky. Because if you're not constantly putting yourself out there and being in different places, if you are doing that, then you have more of a chance to get those lucky breaks, because you're in enough places where just the odds increase. So yes, with a career in art or whatever, there's a lot of luck involved, but there's definitely ways to increase your chances of getting lucky. So, and and also, like I said, you have to recognize those opportunities when they present themselves.
Yeah. I did a book as a one-shot book with an artist named Coy Turnbull. He was he's an amazing artist. If you look him up, Coy Turnbull, he actually worked side by side with Mike Turner for quite some time before Mike passed. And but Coy is a good friend of mine, and we did this book. And it was like almost a 40-page book, single shot. And Coy taught me a ton about how he approaches art through working on this book. And I can tell Coy getting frustrated with me on the way I would handle something, or how I'm approaching lighting, and which is contrary to the way he approaches it and everything. So, when we finally finished it and everything, it really was, we went through the ringer on this thing in various amounts. And Coy is very, this is the way I want it. This is, and everything. And it taught me how to just, hear the feedback, as well as, okay, this is, you got to work as a team, because I think I know sometimes. And so now I'm digging in and then we're pushing back and everything. So we finish it, and I'm thinking, first of all, it came out really great. I was really proud of it. But then, I'm looking at the drawing and the line work and everything that Coy did, and I thought it was just fabulous, some really innovative stuff. And I remember letting that book go and going, it would be really cool if I could just get something else, to work with him on. But in my mind, I'm going, you probably hates me. You probably like, because I pushed back on so much, and I realized later on, when I thought it was way too late. And about a year later, he called me up and said, "Hey, I have a cover, and can you work with me again on it? Work with me on this." I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely. I'll do anything for you, man." And I was humbled, because I thought I had lost something, and sometimes it doesn't come around again, and which is why I'm so excited about this new project, because I thought for sure this was never going to come around again, the way I'd seen it go to different publishers and all kinds of stuff. But Coy did this special edition Fathom for Nowhere Comics, Nowhere something Comics, and it's a very rare cover. But I went 10 rounds on him, literally 10 rounds of coloring and everything like that. And by the time we got to 10, he was satisfied with it, and I hope he still likes it and everything. But I remember thinking about every page that we kind of pushed back and forth through that 40-page book that we did, and remembering those hard lessons and keeping them, abreast. Like, okay, this is page 23, that, the glow on her arm or whatever it is, the same issue was there. And so I can learn from that. And I can learn from, this is where that failure that time is going to help me here, and just systematically picking out that failures throughout that time we worked together before. And I think we had a pretty successful, in fact, if you go to my website, icolorcomics.com, it's the very first image there. It's the Fathom special edition cover. I really am proud of that. Not so much, the way it looks and all that stuff, but really kind of the process that it came, that we got to that point. And I appreciated Coy, because he was really just direct on saying no or yes, or this is what I was thinking when I was doing this part of it and whatnot. And you want guys like that, because sometimes they're just going, well, you don't know, if you don't have a thick skin, you're going to blow each other out of the water. But we learned, through a year and a half of working on that 40-pager, that, okay, we can say this and know that I still love you, or I still care for you, or I still, we can still go hang out. And I still respect the work you're doing. And in fact, it's because I respect the work you're doing that I can give you that feedback. And, because at the end of the day, everyone just wants to do their best, and everyone's just doing the best they can.
Yep.
So, but coming back to this new project, once I got the green light, or have gotten the green light now, I started going back on stuff I've done, over the past 25 years, and going, okay, this is going to come up. So I got to be okay and be prepared to be with this lesson again. Because once you learn something and you go, I'm past that now, guess what's coming next? New damn thing. It's just going to come in the same different form. So you got to be okay with, it might be even harder to get by it this time, because we are who we are. So allow yourself to go, okay, that came up before. It's still there. I still get to be with it. Maybe I get to be with it different this time, or some in a little different way, that it's not crushing me. It's not crushing the people around me. It's actually, I'm being more of a contribution to what's going on, because one of the beautiful things about comics is it's, most of it, at least most of them, are teamwork, regardless of who you're, I know there's a lot of great, amazing people out there that do their own, and a lot of it still gets handed off to somebody else, whether it's printing, whether it's design, layout, lettering, coloring, inking, penciling, writing, editing. It's all trusting the next person or the person before. And if you're not willing to take all that feedback they've given you, or you work with them a long time, you're gonna have it's gonna be a lonely little career. It's gonna be hard. And I know a lot of really talented guys, just, they end up by themselves really frustrated, and that's hard. That's hard to watch.
Yeah, I think it's also like such a valuable lesson to be able to learn the difference between an editor who doesn't know what they're talking about. Because there's an old saying, and it's slightly true, which is like a camel is a horse designed by committee, right? So like sometimes when you have like too many cooks, and especially in corporate, like kind of bringing down the thing, you as an artist do have to kind of keep that cool thing from getting gentrified, like in that process, right? Because like you have to be like, this is why you want this. This is why you hired me, right? Like I'm the creative, and I have to draw that line and be like, this is the creative choice. But there's a difference between that and like a really seasoned, smart editor who the difference is, like Gene had mentioned this before, it's kind of like musicians. When they get in a room, there's a give and take when you jam, right? And a good editor, no matter how much control you have over your work, is going to contribute to that session. And a really good editor is going to make it the best song it can be. Whereas you're going to have like an okay riff at the beginning, and it just progressively is going to get better. And I've experienced both. I've experienced, I'm not going to name names, and it was a long time ago, but I've experienced, people who wanted to make changes that were not going to benefit the work. But I've also had the more recently the other experience where, there was some really amazing suggestions where I was like, and like, again, it kind of ties into what Gene was talking about, like the ways to recognize like kind of self-defeating talk. It's almost the same process with dealing with other people professionally, where you ask yourself a question, like, if I did that, what would the work be? And if you're honest and kind of objective about it, that's a good way to parse between someone who doesn't know and is interjecting where they probably shouldn't, or somebody making a call that's really good. Like if you're working in a corporate environment, maybe they're making a call based on what moves on the shelf, like whether it looks good or not, like it needs to make money. Or like, with a good editor, like, if you think about that, like if I change that in this story, would it be, to me, like the more recent experience was like all the feedback lit a fuse. So even though it seemed like it'll be more work, I'm excited about the work because I know it'll improve the work. And like, that's what we're trying to do in comics, right? We're trying to make good art here. So like the more, like if Scott, like tonight, were to like say, hey Josh, like on this page you should do this on something I'm doing, and he's right, of course I'm going to listen. And even if my instinct is going to be like, no, that's not right, I'm going to think about it, because that instinct's not always right. Anyhow, rambling, but it's good stuff.
Well, like we're kind of at the hour and a half mark. So, is there anything, Gene, that you wanted to get in that we didn't discuss yet before we start to close things out? And having said that, I definitely, once you're in a position where you can unveil your new project, we'll definitely have you back on, because I think that'll fit in with the other topic that we didn't really get to approach so much. So.
It's exciting.
But as far as what we talked about today, is there a cap you want to put on anything, or anything that we didn't get to discuss that you want to put out there before we start wrapping things up?
Well, there's actually three things. One, Josh, I think your book is just fantastic, by the way.
Oh, thanks.
It's absolutely. I've been perusing through it. I'm like, this is just some good, revealing, heart on your sleeve stuff, and that type of work I just love, especially when it's done so creatively and executed so well. It's just great. Oh. So people go by that. And then Scott, anyone who out there who wants to make comics, and I'm like have this weird habit of buying all the tools. I get so many tools. I have pens that are just crazy. I have people come by the art walk tomorrow, and they'll see I have like 3 drawing desks, because I accumulate stuff. I accumulate the right tools. It's all about, in my mind somewhere, it's all about the tools. The best tools, basic tools and advanced, and just tools that I've ever found for just comic books alone in one collection is your Comic Maker's Toolkit.
Thank you.
Yeah, anyone who's up to making comics, if you don't have that, go get it. If you've been a veteran for 20 years, go get it. It makes things easy. It's an easy resource. It's an easy. Scott kind of organizes it all, in the ecosystem that is comics. And whether you're using Illustrator, Photoshop, Procreate, fonts, everything's in there that you need electronically to lay it all out and have it all come together. So go get I've checked out his the lettering class that you've done, and it's stellar, dude. It's just
Thank you.
So I want to acknowledge it, because it's not easy. I've tried to put together like a toolkit myself. It ain't gonna happen. It's just
they take a long time to put together.
Yeah.
And then I think probably the last thing is, like I said, I've been going for the past year and a half and reteaching myself to draw, and I'm finally at a point where I'm actually liking what's coming out. And in fact, on the icon, the middle character, it took me a year and a half to draw that character on the graphic I sent you today, Scott, which is the graphic for I think this episode. The middle character is the new character for the samurai book that's my book that I'm drawing, that I told myself I would draw.
Yes.
And so that's going to kind of take the sidecar of this new whole thing that I'm doing. But I'm real excited about that as well. But being able to do that and then look at it and go, I'm satisfied with that. Not only am I satisfied, I'm proud of it. And I think it's going to fulfill a lot of the dreams and everything that I made up in the past 20 years in developing this story and everything around it. So allow yourself, if you don't get somewhere today, it's okay. You just know what you're not going to work on tomorrow, because we're not going to work on what we're crappy at. We're going to work on what we want to keep doing. And, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing, expecting a different result. So if you're not producing something that that's not driving you crazy like it did me for so many, literally years, allow yourself the space to forgive yourself and change. Go work at a different desk, go work in a different environment, go work outside, work different computer, draw with a different pen or whatever it is. But allow yourself to be, okay, that's where this part of my journey got me. And now I can step into something new. Trust me, you don't know how to do it yet. And it's only going to take you getting out there and making a bunch of failures for those successes to start coming. Because until you get rid of all that, those losses, you're not going to have those wins. And then all of a sudden those wins are just going to start building up because you've given yourself the space to, be okay with those failures.
Inspiring.
Goal. All right, so let's go ahead and start wrapping this thing up. Josh, anything you want to add other than that?
That was beautiful.
Find all that stuff.
I can't add much. That was amazing. Just Amazon, 2 stories. You can get it actually at your local comic book shop too if you want to support it local owned. But if you want a pretty good deal for like a low price, you can get this. I think it's still around like the $5 mark, and I get the same advance. And I don't know how it's happening, but I will take advantage of that because, like we were talking about today, if there's like an opportunity, you need to be there taking advantage of it. And to me, I want you guys to be able to take advantage of that opportunity. And then I also will just say, I've been in the industry like probably half as long as our guest. And I just want you guys to know that like there's nothing that's been said here that doesn't completely reflect truth of everything I've experienced so far. And I'm like halfway in my journey on that. So there's a lot of good nuggets and advice in this episode. You guys should back it up, listen to it again too, because just what a great just body of stuff you brought up. So
yeah, and also if you like this episode, that we have another episode with Gene. If you just go hunt it down, check that one out. It's just as good as this one. You kind of hear a little more about his journey and just some of the amazing things that he's done and accomplished in his career and everything. So definitely check that out if you haven't already. On top of that, Gene, I don't know. I mean, you've got a number of different websites. Which ones? We got Art of Gene up here. So that's your fine art.
Machine Comics. Machine Comics.
Go to machinecomics.com.
Yeah, get on that mailing list because in the next 3 months, we are going to blow your mind. We got some stuff in the works that is just, like I said, we have a big announcement to make in the next couple of weeks. And then we're going to see what I can do with this little samurai book that I got. And then we have post-apocalyptic panda bears. There's some cool stuff coming about that is just, it blows my mind just thinking about it, or just when I start saying stuff out loud, I'm like, this is going to be crazy. But in the next 3 months, get on that mailing list, get it, you can sign up for our mailing list. We're going to have a brand new email newsletter. There's going to be some videos coming out with interviews from our creators and the people that you're going to be meeting and more of, watching our journey. We're going to be sharing that with a lot of people. So get on that mailing list, and that way we can bring you guys all along for the ride, because it's going to be great. And I'm so excited for it. And, this is all, it's funny. I was talking with one of my fellow creators last night, and he's all, man, it feels really good to fail up to this. And I'm like, yeah, that's great. And it was so, it was perfect for, the conversation we're having today. But it's like, yeah, we failed our way to this point, and we know, where we're going with this. So worst case scenario, it's going to be freaking awesome. So So thank you. I appreciate the space and the time, guys. And this is really exciting. And I would love to come back and share this big thing that's going to happen.
Yeah,
oh, you will.
Yeah, we'll definitely have you back on. Yeah, and as far as me, like Gene mentioned, really, guys, if you are in the market for some cool tools that are going to help you build your comic books, I've got tons of different stuff. I've got the Comic Maker Toolkit, which Gene talked about. If you want just a sample of that, you can join if you join my mailing list, there's a link on the website. I've got a Comic Maker Starter Kit, and that'll just give you an idea of some of what you're going to get. In the Comic Maker Toolkit, I've got the Amazing Comic Book World Builder, which it has different facades and things that you can take, and you can like buildings, because nobody wants to sit there and draw buildings. So all these buildings that you can skew in perspective and build your whole cityscape. It's got like all kinds of explosions and things that you can use to populate, just tools, things that make your comic books easier. And of course, a lot of these come with fonts and brushes and templates, and there's just tons of stuff. The Comic Lettering Masterclass is there's a version for Procreate and for Adobe. And it's basically like a digital course. You can open it up in Photoshop or Procreate and just kind of go through each layers like you would a book, and it will teach you that. Plus it comes with all kinds of brushes, and it comes with guides, like basically Ames lettering guides. It's a little hard to find nowadays, but I've got digital, almost like you would look at a notebook, but it's ruled at the exact size of Ames lettering guides. You can practice your lettering there. There's all kinds of tools. There's tons of stuff on my website. Just you can go to circbooks.com, and if you click on the digital, I think it's the downloads tab. Click on the downloads tab, and you'll see all the tools and stuff that I sell on there, and most of them are on sale right now, if I'm not mistaken. So that's what I got to promote right now. The other thing I want to mention is our mailing list for the Artcasters. So the show we do the show every single week, but it bounces back and forth between my channel and Josh's channel. So that can get a little confusing. Plus, YouTube doesn't always let people, the way this algorithm works, doesn't always let you know when we're going to go live. So if you want to go live, if you don't want to miss out when we're going live, the best way to do that is join our mailing list. We don't spam you or anything like that. We just usually send out about 30 minutes before we go live. We'll send out an email. It'll have the link to where you can join live. It'll tell you who the guest is going to be, what the topic's going to be, and all that stuff. So definitely, if you haven't already, subscribe to that mailing list, and you won't be sorry. And that's all we have to talk about today. And I think, like I said, we'll have Gene back relatively soon, because he's got something on the horizon that sounds super cool that I'm excited about. I hate doing this kind of stuff, because people are like, it's almost like, oh, we know this thing and you don't know it yet, but you will soon. So stay tuned for that. All right, everyone. Oh yeah, and as always, I just wanted to thank everyone in the chat. We had a pretty lively chat going on. So thank you guys, and we'll see you next week on Josh's channel.
Yes.
Later. Thanks, Come on, I see you.